Chapter 5. Jack Jeeves was a baggy-faced man who looked to be in his mid-40s. He wore clothes that looked as if he had gotten them from Rip Van Winkle after Rip's long sleep in them. Put the clothes on without washing them, or even bothering to shake the wrinkles out too. As Edwards entered the pawn shop, itself hardly the acme of modern civilization, Jeeves was throwing stuff into boxes, moving like a man in a big hurry. Place smelled like a goat farm Edwards had once visited as a kid. Kind of place where you want to spray everything with Lysol before you touched it, and then wear rubber gloves and maybe rubber boots just in case. Going someplace, Jeeves? The pawn shop owner paused for a moment, looked up, then went back to loading the cardboard box. He threw a toaster into it. It clanged against a waffle iron. "Hey, Officer Edwards, yeah, I found a great deal on a place uptown. I'm relocating, if it's any of your business." Edwards drifted toward Jeeves. That harried man smelled as if he'd wandered into a skunk convention, and each animal had paused to pay its respects to the man before moving on. The whole case stank to high heaven. "What is this I see?" Edwards poked at a box of fake Rolexes. Jeeves paused in his packing. "Oh, hey, Jeeves, I was sure I turned those into the proper authorities. I'll drop 'em off on my way uptown." Edwards looked around, then back at the nervous little man. "Well, the fact is, Jeeves, I'm looking for something a little more esoteric than a box full of fake watches. You know what I'm talking about here." "Come on, officer, you know I quit handling porno." "I'm not talking about those pictures somebody scammed from Penthouse, Jack. I'm talking about something on the lines of hardware, lethal hardware." Jeeves paled. He swallowed, shook his head. I don't know what you mean, officer." Edwards grinned. Jack might as well have been a big flashing neon sign over his head saying, "Lion scum." Edwards grinned. Jack might as well have a big flashing neon sign over his head saying, "Lion scum here." "I look stupid to you, Jeeves? Got the word fool tattooed on my forehead? You are hiding something. Of course you are always hiding something, and inquiring minds want to know." Jeeves's eyes went wide as he stared past Edwards. Man looked like he'd just seen Dracula stroll into the joint. Edwards glanced over his shoulder. Agent or operative or whatever the hell he was, Kay had just stepped into the place. Edwards wondered if that was a first or a last name. Jeeves said, "Hiya, Kay." Edwards frowned, glanced back at Jeeves, then at Kay again. "You know this scumbag?" "We are acquainted, yes," Kay said. "Okay, Jeeves, where are the imports?" "Imports? I'm sure I don't know what you are talking about, Kay." Jeeves, why do you do this? Lie to me, after all we've been through." You got it all wrong, Kay. I wouldn't shine you on. And it never rains in California either." Kay pulled his pistol and pointed it at Jeeves. "You know what I do to liars, Jeeves?" Edwards fought to keep his grin in check. He knew this routine. Kay was bad cop, and he knew his part. "Hey, take it easy, Kay. Jeeves is trying to help us here. Ain't that right, Jeeves?" Jeeves said nothing. He swallowed. He held another toaster in his hands, stared at Kay. Kay said, "I'm going to count to 3. If you don't give me what I want to see, I'm going to blow your head off." He levered the hammer back on his pistol, kept his face deadpan. No subtlety. The man went right for the threat. But it was his show, and Edwards had to play along. "Come on, Jeeves, the man is crazy. He'll do it. Better give it up." "I don't have anything. I don't know anything." 1. "Really, Kay, I swear." 2. "Give it up, Jeeves," Edwards said. "That thing has got a hair trigger." 3. Kay squeezed the trigger. The kaboom was real loud as it bounced off the walls and floor and ceiling. Jeeves's head exploded. Blood and brains flew everywhere. He dropped the toaster. Holy gosh! Jeeves collapsed like a boneless chicken, half his head just gone. Edward's training didn't completely desert him. Somehow he managed to pull his own weapon. He pointed it at Kay, who had already lowered his piece to point at the floor. Put it down right now. Scumbag or not, you couldn't just execute somebody like that, no matter which damned agency you worked for. Not even in New York City. Hell, not even in Brooklyn. Well, the Bronx or Queens, maybe. I warned him. Put the gun down. You warned him too. Read my lips, butthole. You are under arrest. You have the right to remain silent. If you give up that right, anything you say can and will no doubt be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one, lighten up, Edwards. What you going to arrest me for? Discharging a firearm in the city limits? You are crazy, you know that? Edwards gestured at the dead man with his pistol. Discharging a firearm? I got you discharging a firearm right here. Abruptly, he shut up because a sudden short circuit in his brain stopped his mouth from working. His lips moved, but no sound came out. He must have looked like a fish pulled onto a boat deck. He was looking right at Jeeves when the dead man got to his feet. Blap, just like that, blown open head and all. Oh, man. He felt his mouth agape, but he was unable to control it. His gun arm sagged until his pistol was pointed at the floor. Couldn't control that either. Man. Jeeves's head flowed, morphed, and reformed into a new head. I never even did any acid. How can I be having a flashback? The new head looked at Kay. I wish you wouldn't do that. Kay stepped forward, grabbed Jeeves, and shoved his pistol under the rebuilt chin. I don't have time to screw around here, Jeeves. Show me the toys, or I'll use up another head, at the least. Edward said, Man, no way in hell. All right, Jeeves said. In the back. Jeeves started toward the counter, Kay following him. Kay turned to look at Edwards. You just gonna stand there and catch flies in your mouth? Edward shook his head, closed his mouth, reholstered his piece. No way he was going to try arresting anybody and try to explain this one. A guy with funny eyes and a Star Wars blaster was one thing. Watching Jack Jeeves get his head blown off and him acting like it was a bad haircut, that was something else again. He had no desire to spend his next few years in the loony bin, thank you. He wasn't ever going to tell anybody about this. He followed the two. In the back, Jeeves went to a shelf. He touched a hidden control and the shelf rotated, revealing more boxes on the other side. Any other time, this would have been a pretty neat trick, but after that exploding head, it was petty shit. Jeeves pointed at a box. There's the hardware. Come take a look, Kay said to Edwards. To Jeeves, he said, and you stay right there. Don't you move a cephalopod. Edwards walked over, looked in. There were a bunch of things in the box that looked like a display from a sci-fi convention. From their shapes, Edwards guessed that most of them were weapons. He looked up. Maybe he had been right. Maybe he had been right. He had a great fear that Captain Kirk or Luke Skywalker was going to walk in the door any second now, and he was not ready for that. No way, no how. Jeeves said, If you are interested, I can make you a nice deal on an electrostatic deoxygenator, Kay, with full Zoids, no extra. I already got one. Shut up, Jeeves. There it is, Edwards said. That one looks just like the one the guy I chased had. He pointed but did not touch the thing. He had no desire to put his hand into that box. Might get him sent into some other dimension. Weird. Sheet. That word didn't even belong in the same dictionary as whatever this mess was. His head hurt. He needed to go lie down. For a week or two. Somewhere far away from this town. Alaska, maybe, or Staten Island. Kay shook his head at Jeeves. Jeeves, you solar reverberating carbonizer with implosion capacity to an unlicensed illegal cephalopod? Jeeves shrugged. He said he left his license in his other body. He looked okay to me. Did he now? He had cash, Kay. Kay cut his gaze at the ceiling, then back at Jeeves. Now you know he wouldn't have needed hardware like that unless he was buying it for a hit. Who's the target? He didn't say. Kay raised the weapon. Edwards stood there, mildly curious to see if Jeeves would grow yet another head if Kay blew this one off. Come on, Kay, why would he tell me that? I don't know. All I did was sell him the piece. Kay lowered his gun, sighed. All right, Jeeves, it's confiscated, all of it, and I want you on the first transport out of the gravity well, or next time I'll shoot you where it doesn't grow back. Jeeves grinned nervously, more like a ricketus than a smile. Probably thought he was getting off light. Thrown out of the gravity well. Gravity, well, yeah, right, whatever the hell that was. Edwards tried to recover. Yeah, and we are taking the Rolex fakes, too. They walked out of the shop. Suddenly, the thought of sitting down on the curb right there seemed like a great idea. He sat. He stared at the box of Rolexes. No answers in there. Kay came out with a box of sci-fi gear, fiddled with an electronic alarm cutoff, took the stuff to the car, and put it in the trunk. Edwards watched him. It looked like somebody had come by the Ford and dumped a bunch of ashes and dust all around it, but otherwise the car was untouched. That the car was okay was almost as much of a surprise as Jeeves and his exploding head. This still was New York City. Unless maybe it wasn't. Maybe any second now, old Rod Serling holding a cigarette would step out from the pawn shop, all in scratchy black and white, and that do-do-do-do music would crank up behind him. Meet James Edwards, an unremarkable cop who thought when he left for work this morning it was going to be just another day chasing criminals. James Edwards, who tripped and stumbled, and when he got back to his feet, found himself no longer in New York City, but instead in the Twilight Zone. Do-do-dooby-dee-doo, wah-wah-wah. After he shut the trunk, Kay walked back over to where Edwards sat and sat next to him. Having a little trouble putting a handle on it, aren't you, son? It's not exactly the kind of thing you can find a proper drawer to file it in, isn't it? Is it? I bet you wouldn't mind if I offered some kind of rational explanation, would you? Here, have a fake Rolex. Edwards took the watch, stared at it. Want me to give you some answers? Please. Kay lit a cigarette, took a deep drag, blew a thin stream of smoke into the already smoggy New York air. Said, afraid I can't help you a whole lot. You only got a little silver of the pie, and look at the mess it made out of your day. I mean, I could tell you, but you wouldn't remember it anyway. Be wasting both our time. Mister, no way in hell I could ever forget this. It would be the last thing on my mind as they lowered me into the grave. Kay put on his shades, took what looked like a little tape recorder from his pocket. You think? Here, ever see one of these, son? Edwards looked. What? There came a bright flash of light. Light glinted off something, and Kay said, and his wife said, Yeah, I know, Harry, but this one is eating my popcorn. Kay laughed, and Edwards blinked. He looked down, saw a half-eaten order of broccoli and beef, and several empty bottles of Chinese beer on the table. He looked around. Yep, a Chinese restaurant, all right. People eating, talking, laughing. How the hell had he gotten here? And where had he gotten here from? Kay glanced at his watch. A Rolex or a pretty good fake, and said, Whoops, gotta run. Thanks for the egg rolls and the help. See you tomorrow, 9 a.m. sharp. Edwards blinked again. Where are we? See what I said about too much tequila, son? You really need to moderate your drinking a little. I hope you don't get hangovers. Kay got up, dropped some bills on the table, and left. Edwards stared at his plate. Man, he couldn't remember anything since. He stopped and thought about it. Since he'd left the station with this guy to go somewhere. Where? Here? After drinking enough tequila to black out? Hell, he hadn't gotten that plowed since he'd been in high school. He didn't remember anything. Damn it, this was bad. The waitress came over. "Another beer?" "No, ma'am, coffee." While he waited, he looked down again, saw a business card on the table. His name, tomorrow's date, the time, 9 a.m., and address were written on the card. The address was on Battery Drive. He turned the card over, but there was nothing there except 3 letters centered. MIB. He looked at his watch. A Rolex, or a pretty good copy of one. Where had that come from? What did all this mean? He shook his head. Something wasn't right here. Probably be a good idea to find out what that was.